started working with leather probably 40 years ago, and my first experience was a belt kit that I got from Tandy Leather. My nephew was involved in that, was making hand-tooled belts, so I decided that I would start doing that. And one thing led to another, and I had belt after belt after belt. So the next idea was that because I owned a music store, I thought, you know, maybe I can make guitar straps. At that time, there was nobody making really leather guitar straps. So I bought a hide and started cutting it up and by hand with a pair of scissors, and that's how that started. And I ended up making so many of them that I'd take them into the store and put them up for sale. And at one point I had, I think, 65 of them on a rack there in the music store. So one day, one of my traveling salesmen that called on me from one of the wholesalers in Chicago came in, and I showed them to him, and he says, "Oh, you shouldn't have any trouble selling those to other music stores." He says, "Give them to me and I'll take them out with me and I'll sell them for you." So lo and behold, 2 days later he called me and said he had sold every one of them. So I thought, well, this is a good deal. The only problem was, he said he couldn't do it any longer because it was a conflict of interest with him and the company that he worked for. But he said, you should have no problem. He says, you know all the dealers around here. So the next time you get several of them made up, just take them and show them to other people. LM Products actually means Larry Mechem Products. Started off, it was leather music. And I remember I went to a show one time, and I had a sign made up that said leather music on the top of the twirling stand that had all of the straps on it. But we dropped that after that and just went with LM Products. First of all, my dad was involved in the business almost from the get-go, and I know I would tell him something that I was trying to figure out or whatever, and I remember one night I was in bed and it was midnight, and my dad called me and he says, "I got it figured out about that strap that you wanted to do." So he was a big influence and actually worked at the shop up until, oh gosh, he was 93 or 94 years old. Would come in and work half a day, and it was good to have him there because his insight was always important, because he had worked at General Motors for 30-some years as a supervisor. So he understood how to work with people and what it meant to do a good job. And he ran a sewing machine part of the time. He put straps together, helped package things, and he was quite helpful from that standpoint. We would go to the trade show every year and take our products to show. And I remember one year we went to Anaheim, California, had the booths all set up. And at that point, we were also selling keyboard stands, and my son LJ was involved in that. And I remember about the first day of the show, he said, "You know, Dad, I'm tired of running music stores." He says, I said, "I'm about at the same place you were about 17 years ago." And I said, "Well, that's interesting, because, you know, I'm getting to the age where I want to think about retiring. So let's figure out something to do with the music stores, and you just come downstairs and start working in the leather shop." And lo and behold, that's what happened. And now, how many years later? Probably 15 to 17 years later, My grandson Tyler is involved in the business, and my son LJ is thinking about retiring, so probably in a couple more years he'll retire and Tyler will take it over. So it's something that was started by me and with the help of my father, and passed down to LJ, and now it's going to be passed down to Tyler. In talking about LJ, when he decided to come aboard with the leather shop, one of the first things I talked to him about doing was that I said we need to get a new catalog. Now he came to work probably in the spring of, I forget what year it was now, but I had a couple things I wanted him to do. First was the catalog, and then the next thing we needed to do was to be able to barcode every product that went out of there, because the people we sold to said we can't have your product unless it's barcoded. So by the middle of the summer, and I think it was by the time Summer NAMM showed, he had a new catalog done and had all of the paraphernalia done so we could barcode everything. And from that point on, then I started phasing myself out of the business, and to the point to where I was not working 5 days a week. I would come in 3 or 4 days a week, still doing the trade show, still doing all this, but LJ was actually running the shop, which is interesting because when he first came, he had a little office up by the main shop, and I was still back in the big office and still doing my part as I always did. And then I realized that it's time for him to move into the big office. So then I moved into another smaller office, and then I eventually moved out of that because I realized I didn't need an office anymore. Now the interesting part is that Tyler now has moved in. He was in the smaller office, now he's in the big office, and LJ's back in the small office. So time marches on as far as the offices go. Some of the things that I have made over the years and things that I started with, because my son was a drummer, I made stick bags, cymbal bags, different things that a drummer or percussionist could use. I remember one year I had made up several stick bags and cymbal bags, and I took them to a PAS, Percussion Arts Society convention, which was held in Indianapolis. I had no idea how it would come out, but it did come out quite well because I sold everything that I took that day. And it was very inspiring at that point. And the stick bags were really the thing that took off, because they were different than anybody else were making, and I could make them out of suede and all kinds of different kinds of leather, and in fact to this day they're still making the same stick bag. And in fact at one point we made these stick bags for a drumstick company by the name of Vic Firth, and this went on for 4 or 5 years, and we were sending him 100 to 150 stick bags a week. And I had one lady that's all she did was make stick bags, and she didn't even make them in the shop. She made them at her home, and we would take the materials to her, and once a week we'd come and pick them up, and lo and behold, the next day we'd ship 100 to 150 bags to Vic Firth. Speaking about designs, some of the first designs that we did were basically 2.5 or 3 inch wide guitar straps, which I actually hand tooled. and they were, in fact, some of the hand tooling is still being done by the shop on a reissue basis. But the designs just kept coming and kept coming, and I remember I finally got away from doing strictly tooling leather, finally got into doing more sewing, using webbing, using other raw material other than leather. Still putting leather on the product, but a lot of the customers wanted something maybe a little softer than leather, and something that was a little bit more fashionable maybe, even though leather is still the main product. Some of the things that I'm working on now are making straps out of scrap leather, and that's one of the big problems with the leather company, because the hides are all different shapes, so you have to do something with the scrap that you cut off the edges. One of the things that we're doing, we have these pieces die cut, and then we have a piece like this, which this goes in like so. The end result is a strap that looks like this when you're done. And this has become very popular with one of our distributors. We make this in 2-inch and 3-inch. This is the 3-inch here. And then we make another one, which we call these little parts peanuts, because they actually look like a peanut. We put these together like so, and when we're done with it, this becomes a mandolin strap. This fits over the headstock, and this other end fits into the mandolin. And we do these in several different colors, and these are some of the things that I'm working on now. At my age of 77, I'm not ready to retire, so I want something to do. And I live in Nashville, Tennessee. The shop's in Anderson, Indiana. They ship me the parts. I finish the straps and send them back to them. And we make these in guitar straps, banjo straps, and mandolin straps. And that's what we're making out of the scrap.